For nearly 60 years, nobody cared about Caleb Dawson's farm. Not the banks, not the government, not even the people living nearby, because the land sat in one of the driest and most forgotten parts of Wyoming. The property had belonged to Caleb's family for 3 generations. His grandfather built the farmhouse by hand after returning from the war, and every fence, barn, and broken tractor carried part of the family's history. By the time Caleb inherited the farm, most nearby families had already left. Small towns were dying, young people moved away, and farming itself barely paid enough to survive anymore. The town of Hollow Creek had become the kind of place people only passed through, never the kind of place billion-dollar companies visited. At least, not until the trucks arrived. At first, nobody understood what was happening. Hundreds of trucks rolled through Hollow Creek over several weeks. Heavy machinery, private security vehicles, construction equipment unlike anything locals had ever seen. Then came the announcement. A powerful technology company called Heliox Systems had purchased thousands of acres surrounding Hollow Creek, and they planned to build one of the largest underground AI data facilities in America. The project was worth billions. Massive underground servers, private energy systems, entire sections buried beneath reinforced concrete and steel. And suddenly, Caleb Dawson's quiet farm sat directly beside the largest construction project Wyoming had ever seen. The company worked non-stop, day and night. Lights flooded the valley after sunset. The sound of drilling echoed through the mountains for months. At first, Caleb ignored it. Corporations built projects all the time, but eventually, strange things started happening around his property. Every night around 2 a.m., the ground beneath the farmhouse began vibrating softly. Not enough to damage anything, just enough to feel wrong. Sometimes, Caleb walked outside after midnight and noticed a deep humming sound coming from beneath the earth itself. The deeper Heliox dug underground, the stranger the valley became. Birds started falling from the sky near the northern field. Livestock refused to move near the old barn behind Caleb's farmhouse. Even the dogs became restless after dark. The old barn sat above the oldest part of the property, a place Caleb's grandfather once warned him never to dig beneath. As a child, Caleb remembered his grandfather saying something strange about the land. Some parts of this farm are more valuable underground than above. Back then, Caleb assumed it was simply old farmer talk. Now, he wasn't so sure. Then one morning, Heliox Systems finally came to his door. 2 executives introduced themselves politely and offered Caleb an unbelievable amount of money for part of his land. Not the entire farm, only the northern fields surrounding the old barn. The first offer was $5 million, more money than Caleb had ever imagined in his life. But Caleb immediately noticed something strange. Why would a billion-dollar corporation care about one abandoned section of farmland? The executives claimed they needed the land for infrastructure expansion, but their explanation felt rehearsed, careful, almost nervous. So Caleb refused, politely, at least at first. The moment he said no, the atmosphere inside the farmhouse changed completely. One executive quietly told Caleb, "You don't understand how important that land is." That was the moment Caleb realized this was no ordinary business deal. And after that meeting, the surveillance began. Drones appeared above the property at night. Black SUVs parked near the road after midnight, and unknown workers were spotted near the fences surrounding the old barn. When Caleb confronted Heliox security near his land, They claimed they were simply conducting routine perimeter checks, but Caleb knew they were watching him. And whatever existed beneath that northern field terrified them enough to spend billions protecting it. For the first time in his life, Caleb Dawson felt like a stranger on his own land. The valley no longer belonged to farmers. It belonged to Heliox Systems. Every week, the company expanded deeper underground. New tunnels, new cooling systems, new security fences stretching across miles of desert. Locals noticed something strange about the workers. Many wore badges without names. Some traveled with armed escorts, and nobody was allowed near the lower construction levels. Rumors spread quickly through Hollow Creek. Some believed Heliox was building military technology beneath the valley. Others believed the facility wasn't really a data center at all. Then one elderly rancher told Caleb something unsettling. Companies only spend billions underground when they need something nobody else can see. That sentence stayed in Caleb's mind for days, and eventually, curiosity overcame him. Late one night, Caleb returned to the old barn behind the northern field. The same barn his grandfather warned him about decades earlier. The structure looked ready to collapse. Rotting wood, rusted tools, dust thick enough to hide footprints. But standing inside the barn, Caleb noticed something strange. The floor beneath him was vibrating softly. Not from construction, from something directly below the barn itself. Then Caleb discovered something hidden beneath old farming equipment near the rear wall. A metal hatch buried beneath layers of dirt and wood. The hatch looked ancient, older than the barn itself, and it definitely did not belong on a normal farm. With effort, Caleb forced it open. Cold air rushed upward from the darkness below. Beneath the barn, a staircase descended deep underground. For several seconds, Caleb simply stared into the darkness, because suddenly, his grandfather's warning no longer sounded crazy. The deeper he walked underground, the louder the humming became. A deep mechanical vibration echoing through the walls. At the bottom, Caleb discovered a tunnel carved directly beneath his farm. Not a natural cave. A constructed tunnel. Faded government markings still covered parts of the concrete walls. One rusted sign still barely remained visible. Property of the United States government. Suddenly, everything changed, because the tunnel continued directly toward the Heliox construction site. The further Caleb explored, the newer the tunnel became. Older concrete slowly transitioned into modern steel reinforcements, which meant Heliox had recently connected their billion-dollar facility to whatever existed beneath Caleb's land. Then he heard voices echoing somewhere ahead. Caleb quickly shut off his flashlight and moved into the shadows. Several Heliox engineers stood inside a large underground chamber, studying digital maps. And what Caleb overheard terrified him. The facility's cooling systems were failing. Temperatures underground were rising faster than projected. Without access to the underground aquifer beneath Caleb's northern field, the entire Heliox facility could collapse within months. Billions of dollars in servers depended on water flowing beneath Caleb's property. Water the company could not legally access without his permission. Then, one executive said something Caleb would never forget. If Dawson refuses again, we take the land another way. For the first time, Caleb realized this was no longer about money. The company had been monitoring his property long before construction even began. They knew exactly what existed beneath the northern field years earlier, maybe decades earlier. Caleb backed away carefully through the darkness before anyone noticed him, his heart pounding harder with every step. By sunrise, Caleb Dawson understood the truth. The billion-dollar project beside his farm was never fully complete, because Heliox Systems still needed something only his land could provide. And suddenly, the old family farm had become the single obstacle standing between one of the richest companies in America and disaster. But Heliox was no longer asking politely. Within days, lawyers arrived with new contracts, new offers, and hidden threats disguised as negotiations. $20 million, then $50 million, then $100 million for the northern field alone. But Caleb refused every single offer, because by now, it wasn't just about land anymore. It was about control. Meanwhile, rumors began leaking about problems inside the Heliox facility. Cooling failures, server shutdowns, power instability beneath the underground complex. Every delay was costing the company millions of dollars per day, and Caleb Dawson was standing directly in the middle of it. Behind closed doors, executives debated how far they were willing to go to secure the land. And out on the old family farm, Caleb prepared for the fight of his life. Because somewhere beneath the northern field, hidden beneath generations of forgotten land, flowed the one thing powerful people could not build themselves: water. And without it, their billion-dollar empire would fail. The entire valley had changed. What was once quiet farmland now looked like the edge of another world. Towering security fences, underground server buildings, floodlights burning through the night. And beneath it all, a corporation slowly running out of time. After discovering the underground tunnel, Caleb began searching through old family records hidden inside the farmhouse attic, and what he found shocked him. His grandfather had mapped underground water channels beneath the property decades earlier. Not small wells, an enormous underground aquifer stretching beneath the valley itself. Then Caleb found an old journal written by his grandfather in 1971. Inside were words that suddenly explained everything. If corporations ever discover what sits beneath this land, they will never leave us alone. Suddenly, Caleb understood why his grandfather protected the northern fields so fiercely his entire life. He knew. As a child, Caleb once asked why nobody was allowed to drill near the old barn. His grandfather only replied, "Some things are worth more untouched." Meanwhile, Heliox Systems became more desperate. Construction crews worked around the clock. Emergency cooling units were delivered overnight, and entire sections of the underground facility began shutting down unexpectedly. Without water access beneath Caleb's property, the underground AI servers were overheating faster every week. Investors began noticing delays. Company shares started falling, and billions of dollars were suddenly at risk. Then, the company's founder finally arrived in Hollow Creek personally. Victor Hale, one of the richest technology executives in America. Victor Hale rarely appeared in public anymore, which meant the situation inside the valley had become critical. Employees described him as brilliant, cold, and completely obsessed with finishing the project at any cost. Because the Heliox facility was not just another data center. It was designed to become the largest AI processing network in the country. A machine powerful enough to reshape industries, governments, and global markets. But none of it could survive without the underground water flowing beneath Caleb Dawson's farm. Late one evening, Victor Hale came to Caleb's farmhouse personally. No lawyers, no security teams. Just the two men sitting across a wooden kitchen table. For several moments, neither man spoke. Only the distant humming of the Heliox facility echoed through the valley. Then, Victor placed a new contract in front of Caleb. $200 million for the northern field alone. It was more money than Caleb's family could spend in multiple lifetimes. Victor leaned forward quietly. "You don't understand what's happening here." He explained that the Heliox facility was already partially operational. Governments, banks, defense systems, major corporations, all were preparing to rely on the AI systems underground. According to Victor, failure was no longer an option. Too much money had already been invested. Too much power depended on the project succeeding. Then Victor finally admitted the truth. "We knew about the aquifer before we bought the land." The company had secretly planned the entire project around water beneath Caleb's property from the beginning. But they believed Caleb's farm would eventually fail financially, like every other small farm nearby. Then they could quietly purchase it later. For years, Heliox waited for Caleb Dawson to lose everything, but he never did. Then, Victor said something chilling. "If this project collapses, it won't just destroy my company. It could crash entire systems connected to it." But Caleb wasn't thinking about corporations, or investors, or AI systems. He was thinking about his grandfather, his father, and the land they spent their lives protecting. So Caleb pushed the contract back toward Victor Hale, unsigned. For the first time in years, Victor Hale looked powerless. Then Caleb finally spoke. "You built your empire beside my farm. You should have asked what was underneath before spending billions." Victor left the farmhouse without another word, but Caleb knew the real battle was only beginning. Within days, Heliox security expanded across the valley. Roads closed unexpectedly, drones patrolled constantly, and rumors spread that federal officials were now involved. Then one night, Caleb heard drilling beneath the northern field itself. Heliox had started digging illegally beneath his property underground. And suddenly, the quiet Wyoming farmer realized something terrifying. The corporation was no longer trying to buy the land. They were trying to take it. The sound beneath the barn grew louder every night, metal grinding against stone, heavy drilling deep underground. Heliox Systems had started tunneling beneath Caleb's land illegally, and they no longer cared whether he agreed or not. That night, Caleb returned underground for the first time since discovering the tunnel. But this time, the atmosphere felt different, more dangerous, more desperate. Dust fell from the ceiling as distant machinery echoed through the darkness. Heliox was getting closer. As Caleb moved through the tunnel, he noticed fresh construction markers painted across the walls. The company had mapped everything beneath his property, every water channel, every underground route, every weakness. Then suddenly, a deafening impact echoed through the tunnel. The drilling machines had broken through. Concrete exploded inward as industrial drills tore into the underground chamber beneath the northern field. The workers froze when they saw Caleb standing there. They clearly never expected the farmer to discover the tunnel system himself. Caleb demanded they stop immediately, but before anyone could respond, the ground began shaking violently. One of the drills had ruptured part of the underground aquifer. Water exploded through the tunnel walls with terrifying force. Within seconds, the underground chamber descended into chaos. Lights failed, machines shut down. Floodwater surged through the tunnels. Caleb barely escaped, as entire sections of the underground system began collapsing behind him. Above ground, alarms erupted across the Heliox facility. Emergency lights flooded the valley red. Without stable cooling water, the AI systems underground began overheating immediately. Engineers desperately tried saving the servers, but temperatures kept rising. For the first time since building Heliox Systems, Victor Hale looked terrified. Billions of dollars were collapsing in real time. Then, part of the underground cooling system exploded beneath the valley. The shockwave shook the entire Hollow Creek region. Windows shattered across town. Power failed instantly. Within hours, federal helicopters flooded the valley. Government vehicles sealed every road entering Hollow Creek. National news stations described the event as a catastrophic industrial systems failure. But locals knew the truth was much bigger. Because the billion-dollar facility failed for one reason. A farmer refused to surrender his land. The next morning, returned to Caleb's farm one final time. But this time, there were no contracts in his hands. Only exhaustion and defeat. The underground flooding had permanently damaged major sections of the Heliox complex. Repairs would cost billions more, and investors were already abandoning the company. Victor quietly admitted something Caleb never expected to hear. You were right to protect the land. For several seconds, neither man spoke, because both understood something important. Some things beneath the earth cannot simply be controlled by money. Victor Hale left Hollow Creek later that afternoon, and according to reports, he never returned to Wyoming again. Over the following year, large sections of the Heliox project were quietly abandoned. Some buildings remained unfinished forever. The valley slowly became quiet again, almost as if the land itself had reclaimed what belonged to it. And out on the old family farm, Caleb Dawson continued living the same simple life he always had. Except now, he finally understood why his grandfather protected the northern field so fiercely. Because sometimes the most valuable thing a person owns is the one thing powerful people cannot replace. And somewhere in Wyoming, one small family farm still sits beside the ruins of a billion-dollar mistake. A reminder that even the most powerful corporations in America can still lose to one stubborn farmer protecting his land. This is the Dustline. This story was crafted using advanced AI storytelling technology to blend cinematic mystery, hidden American power struggles, and immersive storytelling into a unique visual experience. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the Dustline. It only takes a moment, but it helps support the future of cinematic storytelling on this channel. And it ensures you are among the first to uncover the next hidden story buried beneath America.